What is going on, everyone? It's Angus from Boss Fitness and super excited to be sharing with you the knowledge bombs and personal insight within this video. This is Nutrition Mythbusters awesome jam-packed session part 2. For those of you that haven't seen part 1, click below, and this is where you can gain some awesome insight into the knowledge bombs that I've dropped so far, but also some classic fact or fiction type scenarios where I basically busted different myths and given you clarity as to what is legit and you know, what is the best way to go about basically these things. Because obviously each of us, we're looking to have our health on point, we're looking to be able to lose body fat effectively, we're looking to be able to increase performance and to be able to just have our aesthetics on point. And truth be told, a lot of the stuff that we prioritize and put our energy and focus upon is stuff that is basically useless or waste of time and not going to have much impact upon these goals whatsoever. So in our previous part 1, we covered some awesome myths like you must consume protein 30 minutes after a workout, that detoxes are legitimate and necessary, that eating fat makes you fat, and that and that supplements are necessary to be able to effectively lose body fat. So make sure you go and check that out if you haven't actually seen it yet. And welcome to part 2 if you have. Strap yourself in, get excited, and make sure that you're tuning in and get rid of any distractions so that you can take in the knowledge that I've got to share. Obviously as well, if you're someone who just wants to listen to specific bits I'm going to be focusing on below, feel free to scroll ahead to the certain myth that you want to be listening to. And yeah, let's get stuck into it. So the first one is that you must go low GI to be able to effectively lose body fat and have your health in prime. So for those of you that haven't heard of the glycemic index, basically it's a way to categorize certain foods within a numerical sort of standpoint. I'm looking at a chart just here and it shows that low GI foods are between the ranges of 0 to 55, medium GI foods are between 56 to 70, and then high GI foods are 70 plus. In the low GI foods, this is where you basically got a lot of your typical clean sort of stuff. You got carrots, you got tomato soup, you got pear, you got apple, you got low fat yogurt, peaches, peas, plums, oats, bulgur, custard, grapes, orange, all sorts of stuff. And this all sounds good in theory, but the interesting thing here also is that in the high GI section, which is obviously stuff that if you're going low GI you want to cut out, there's a lot of typical clean foods that are in here. Things like honey, things like, what's it got here? Watermelon. You've also got dates, and you've also got mashed potatoes. And that's interesting because obviously when people are focused on eating clean, it's all about focusing on nutrient dense stuff. That stuff there, that's high GI that I just said, is typical nutrient dense stuff. So in other words, this is an example of in my opinion, focusing on the quality of the food, but then within that, yes, it's still kind of flawed anyway, in the way that, as we sort of said there, why then are typical clean foods in the high GI can't eat section? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really sort of make sense. If you're someone that is rocking low GI and has had success with this, feel free to comment below. But I know at the time that I tried to do it, it was just confusing and hard because I was just like, well, these clean foods that I actually enjoy eating, why are they in this high section? Why can't I eat them? And in terms of the long run, I'm not a fan of people who are in that frame of mind where they associate certain food as being really good and certain food as being really bad, because naturally when we enter into an emotional state, we tend to crave what we tell ourselves we can't have. And this can lead to binge eating, all sorts of funny stuff. Oh no, it's not really funny, it obviously sucks. But it can lead to, obviously, in my opinion, a negative relationship with food. Myth busted. Next one is going gluten-free will speed up your rate of fat loss. So gluten-free is becoming all the rage these days in terms of people just cutting out gluten for the sake of it, in the way that they are seeking to eliminate gluten-based products in favor of losing fat at a more efficient sort of rate. Interesting thing here though is that actually isn't going to help things whatsoever, because unless you're eating at a caloric deficit, you're not going to be able to lose fat regardless of if you are including gluten or if you're not. What I suggest is that you should only cut out gluten if you feel sick from eating anything that has gluten and it makes you feel like absolute shit, or you obviously have celiac disease, because I guarantee you, or I would bet my left shoe, that for those people that have actually got celiac disease, it's an absolute chore for them to have to actually look through certain products and be at restaurants and stuff like that and say, I can't have gluten or whatever, you're in a place here where you can choose, because so you actually have the benefit of the doubt here where you can choose whether you want to eat gluten or not. These people, celiacs, they actually can't, because it physically causes allergic reactions and stuff in their body. So get rid of the thinking that just by cutting out gluten is going to speed up your rate of fat loss, okay? Because it won't. I've tried to do that myself before as well. All that did was cause me to actually binge on the stuff that contains gluten when the weekend came around and stuff like that, okay? Focus instead on eating foods that make you feel absolutely amazing and that just taste nice, because at the end of the day, this is what's going to allow you to have a sufficient and sustainable lifestyle, and also enjoy and look forward to everything it is that you're going to be eating. Myth busted. Next one is that you should be hurting and sweating and absolutely wrecked from your workouts for them to count as a successful one. Understand that this is all good in theory, and it's always fun to train balls to the wall in terms of really pushing yourself and walking out of the gym absolutely sweating bricks and whatever, but understand that this is not a indicator of an effective workout. Obviously, yes, depending on the intensity of how hard you've gone and how small your rest breaks were and things like that, this will usually bring about more sweating and stuff like that. But I've also done workouts where I trained at such a high threshold and with such low amount of rest and just loaded my body with so much hustle and whatever. I've had quite a few times where I didn't actually sweat at all, and I wasn't actually sore afterwards and didn't get any DOMS, so delayed onset muscle soreness. Instead, what I'd suggest that you focus on is just taking full ownership of knowing that you push yourself within the realms of what you actually structured for yourself, but then understand that it's never a good idea to just train to failure and balls to the wall all of the time. Train smarter, not harder, and in doing so, this will set you up for a lifelong career of being able to, I shouldn't say career, a lifelong experience of being able to train injury-free and be able to continue to see results from all the effort that you put into your workouts. Myth busted. Next one is eating spoonfuls of coconut oil will help you lose weight. So at the moment, in 2016, upon time of filming this video, coconut oil is still worshipped as something that is like a, just an amazing food and sustenance and thing or whatever. And this is why a lot of people are adding it to a lot of the meals that they're creating. They're melting it and drenching their salads in it. They're making all sorts of things with it, whatever. And this is great because coconut oil has got a lot of nutrients. It's quite nice. It brings about a fudgy sort of texture. You can make your own chocolate with it. You can do all sorts of cool things. But the thing here that a lot of people aren't wary of is that it is very, very fat dense. So in other words, for like about a teaspoon, I think it is or so, I think it's a teaspoon, you would ingest about 110 calories for a teaspoon, okay? So what I come to think of is just that, can I justify spending that much calories in such a small amount of something? No. So this is why I personally don't have coconut oil whatsoever. Maybe if I was eating for muscle gain and needed to make up some calories and whatever, well then by all means I'd make some stuff with coconut oil. But for the majority of you listening, I guarantee your goals of fat loss or to maintain what your body composition looks like. So investing so much calories into something so small in the form of coconut oil just isn't worth it. Thinking that you're going to be able to lose fat better and be healthier and whatever just by smashing down heaps of coconut oil, in my opinion, you're kidding yourself. You can get nutrients from a lot of other lower calorie sources and cover your baseline macronutrients and stuff as well. It isn't necessary to hammer down a certain product or a certain thing just because it has more a better nutrient profile. Myth busted. Next one is that if you lift while overweight, then you won't lose weight. This is something that I absolutely hate this saying. It just annoys me so much because what this then brings about is that apparently then if you're overweight, you need to do heaps of cardio if you can't obviously lift weights. Understand that regardless of your weight, I believe that if you're lifting in a safe manner, and by that I mean not just throwing weights around and whatever, you can effectively actually trigger the rate of fat loss in sync with eating at a caloric deficit, because in doing so what this is doing is giving your body a reason to let go of body fat, and therefore as you're actually bringing progressive overload through the weights that you're lifting, in other words getting stronger and fitter, squatting more, whatever as you go along, this then means that you're giving your body a consistent reason and means to move forward. So just because you're overweight doesn't mean that you can't then utilize weights amongst your regime. I never suggest going bam straight into hammering a lot of sessions per week, but rather moving your way into it if you haven't actually experienced weight training before, because then in doing so it's going to set you up for a sustainable sort of approach to being able to actually include it more and more in your day-to-day, and then getting you to the stage where weight training is just part of your life, and then other activities that you do on the side are just part of an active and healthy lifestyle. Myth busted. Next one is that food source matters far more than the quantity. This is something that I actually used to believe personally for a long time, and what caused me to, I guess, develop such rigid and hardcore clean eating values back in the day. but understand that by living this way, what this actually did was cause me to gain weight, because I would restrict myself within just setting myself into a little box of just like, Angus, you can only eat this, 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 and this. But then everything else outside of the box was food that I actually loved and enjoyed. And what that then led to was that a bit of a 4 and 3 cycle. So 4 days or so of eating nice and clean, super duper nutrient dense stuff. But then when the weekend rolled in, or I entered into an emotional state because I got stressed or whatever, like you guys can probably relate, I would then turn towards these foods that I was cutting out, because as the saying goes, you crave what you tell yourself you can't have. And because one of the human needs is variety, I was basically cutting out a lot of the variety through just eating only these certain bro foods. And by bro foods, I mean like lots of chicken, brown rice and broccoli, heaps of fruit, heaps of salad, just like that sort of stuff, and that was it. But then I would then binge on all this stuff that I was cutting out. Understand that when it comes to the actual priorities of nutrition, when it comes to fat loss, you should sort of view it as if it's a pyramid, okay? At the bottom of the pyramid is the stuff that matters most, and what matters most is energy. Calories in versus calorie out, relevant to your body's thermodynamic process, and that takes into regard your lifestyle indicators, how active you are, your height, your weight, all that sort of stuff. And naturally that means is that if you're getting in enough energy in the form of a calorie deficit, awesome, you're consistent with that, your body will drop body fat. On the other side of things though, if you're getting in too much energy, regardless of how clean it is, you will gain weight, okay? So in other words, vegans can still get fat, vegetarians can get fat, whoever can get fat if you're giving your body too much energy daily. And then below that, if we're working up the pyramid, okay, we've then got macronutrients. So this refers to protein, carbs and fat. Above here we've got micronutrients, so the vitamins and minerals in the foods that you're eating, fiber, and then above that you've got water intake and things like nutrient timing in terms of when you're having your meals, and then right at the very top in terms of things that don't matter much at all is supplements, okay? So if you're focusing on sort of food quality and thinking that that's going to impact your results more than food quantity, you're kidding yourself, okay? Obviously, yes, it's great to have clean eating values and prioritizing nutrient dense food and stuff like that. This is great, but unless you actually build this into your awareness where you actually learn how much your body requires, it's going to be very hard and difficult for you to actually figure out how to move yourself forward, because what happens when progress stalls? Like, how do you eat cleaner? How do you know what I mean? Like, it digs yourself into a bit of a hole. Myth. Next one is that you need multivitamins and supplements to stay healthy. This is something which is very simple to respond to in terms of giving an answer, and that is you don't. Supplements and all that sort of stuff basically replicate the energy and the nutrient profiles and stuff like that of what's in actual food. So in my opinion, you can actually get the body of your dreams through just knowing how to make food work for you. And this is why I see a lot of diets and stuff fail, in the way that yes, you get results in them because obviously you're eating such a low intake of food, you're taking in a lot of different supplements, and you're replacing meals with certain shakes and whatever, and that's cool, but then that means that your results are then dependent upon your ability to keep that going. And if you think about it, in the long run, do you really want to be living a life where you're hammering down so many different supplements? The answer is no, because who would want to, yeah? What I always suggest, and this is something that I teach my clients, is that we want to aim to be able to give our body how much it needs daily through food as best as we can. And then if we want to include things like a whey protein and whatever, to actually try and avoid just drinking it in the form of a protein shake, but seek ways to make it exciting. And by that I mean making exciting smoothies, making like dessert bowls, making cool cakes, making loaves, making cookies, making desserts, like all sorts, and actually getting creative so that way it actually feels like you're eating food. Because the idea is that I'm a firm believer in that you should begin with the end in mind. So if you know that your end in mind is that you want to be having an awesome relationship with food and not spending a chockload of money per month on sups and multivitamins and stuff like that, learn how to make food work for you. Start with that in mind, focus on it, and therefore you'll then be cruising along the journey, and you'll be able to maintain what you achieve so much more easier because you weren't dependent upon supplements. Okay, myth busted. Next one is that the body can only process 40 grams of protein at a time. So this is something that is legitimate to an extent, but then also in the scheme of things, it's not, because your body requires a certain amount of protein each day. This is something that is far more important than focusing on how much protein you're getting in per meal. All right. So let's say, for example, that your body needs 140 grams of protein per day. Okay. If you were to get that in one meal, awesome, that would still count and be just as effective as if you got it in from a lot of different meals, okay? I don't usually suggest that people get all their protein in from one meal, because that would then mean that you'd be fasting the entire day and only eating one meal to meet your intake targets. But hey, if that's sustainable for you and your lifestyle, by all means, go for gold, okay? But for most of us that live an active lifestyle and are busy from work and whatever, I always suggest that you want to try and get protein in each of your meals when you actually want to eat them, because in doing so, protein is what's going to keep you full. It's what's going to bring about what's called satiation and allow you to actually then feel full and satisfied from what you're eating. If you're getting in not much protein, this won't actually happen, and this is what usually ends up with people just taking in far too many carbs, binge eating, the quality of their food is shit, and therefore they're going to feel drained, lethargic, bloated, and just sort of cruising through the day. So if you're focusing instead on just how much protein your body requires across the span of the whole day, rather than how much you're getting in per meal, this is a much better way to go about it. And then if you want to go next level, what I'd suggest is utilizing a tracking app, and then the night before planning ahead when you are going to have your actual meals in sync with how you know your day is going to look like, and make sure that in each of those meals is a protein source. Same applies if you're vegetarian, or if you're vegan, you still need protein just like the rest of us. Myth busted. Next one is that artificial sweeteners are the devil. So this applies to things like aspartame and whatever, which are obviously used in a lot of foods these days, and also in the form of just a sweetener, in terms of like a jar, you got stevia, all that sort of stuff. This is what they use to make things like Coke Zero or Sprite Zero and these sort of diet drinks, or Monster drinks, or Red Bull that have got no calories. And in my opinion, I reckon it's absolutely fine, in the way that no one is going to be drinking such massive quantities and amounts of it to cause any negative damage. So therefore, having it here and there amongst your intake of food, when you feel like it, is totally fine. Because yes, obviously, hasn't got much nutrients, whatever, but hey, your body can still use the source and fuel that comes from it, just like it can from anything else. Why I like it personally is because I like to use it instead of sugar. Sugar is obviously a carb, and therefore it has a lot of calories. So by using an artificial sweetener, it has very few / no calories, which then means it brings about the same sweetness effect, but for no calories. So in my opinion, it's just like, well, cool. That means I can use those calories saved elsewhere throughout the day, in terms of whether it's eating more fruits and vegetables or just making bigger meals in the day. It gives me that choice, because I'm someone that likes to save calories where possible, so that I can make way each day to make sure that I can eat the foods that I want to. And also, it's just cool as part of baking, because you can get that same effect that you would from normal sugar by using, say for example, some stevia, or say for example a can of Coke. You can save yourself a decent hunk of calories by having a Coke Zero, which in my opinion tastes almost exactly the same, and is a great way to be able to, say for example, drink some Coke Zero between a meal, to bring about a sense of fullness for no calories. So in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with artificial sweeteners. You can take that from a grain of sand if you want, and so take it as a grain of sand if you want, but in my opinion, I reckon they're absolutely fine, because you're not going to be drinking enough of them and utilizing enough of them to be able to cause any negative effect. Myth busted. Next one is deep squatting is bad for your knees. Understand that no, this is not the case. What is actually bad for your knees is you actually being overweight, or just dodgy technique, or whatever. In other words, being fat is bad for your knees. Understand that our joints are only meant to be able to handle so much tension and weight upon them. So obviously if you're fat and then you're trying to squat, so for example, this could obviously then be relatively bad for your knees to an extent. So this is why it makes sense to be able to effectively lose body fat, so that you can actually squat and go through ranges of motion with various exercises without any troubles. To think that you cannot squat while being overweight though is also silly, right? But then to think then that squatting is bad in general, in terms of going nice and deep, whatever, it's not bad. What I always suggest is to find your own range of motion in terms of start and finish point, that allows you to lift injury free, and figure out ways to then progress within that. And by that I mean whether you squat high bar, low bar, or whether you squat with dumbbells like a goblet sort of style, or maybe it's above head, whatever. Find out what works for you and what allows you to achieve good solid range of motion without hurting yourself or having a bad time. Myth busted. Next one is that your body can't utilize the calories from junk food. This is something which I used to also believe big time myself personally. Understand that hashtag junk food has still got protein, carbs and fat, just like typical hashtag clean food does. Understand the only difference between these two sort of foods is the nutrient profiles attached to them. What that then means obviously is that your body will take longer to digest and utilize the calories and nutrients that are coming from that super nutrient dense food stuff. But the other side of things, the energy and the calories that are coming from this hashtag junk food, because the nutrients aren't going to be too complex and too too wide in terms of how much it actually contains, your body will break it down pretty quick, and therefore you're not going to be too full or too satiated from it for very long. All right, but to say that your body can't use it is just bullshit. Okay, understand that you can actually include that sort of food in your day-to-day intake if you would like to. All right, because I'm a firm believer that if you try and fill your intake with 100% hashtag clean foods, all this will do is set you into a world and a paradigm of restriction when it comes to food, and this can set you up for binge eating qualities and whatever in the future. I'm only saying that because it happened to me. Okay, it makes sense to be able to allocate a small amount of your intake to this hashtag junk food each day, so that you don't have so you don't feel deprived in any way, so that you don't feel like you're dieting, and therefore you actually enjoy every day as best as possible. So by that I mean, let's say for example that your intake is 1800, it would be wise to allocate about 200 to 300 to this hashtag junk food, and then fill the rest with the stuff that's going to make you feel healthy, on point, and full of energy. Okay, myth busted. Next one is that glutamine and BCAAs are essential if you're lifting heavy. This is something that I used to believe myself as well, and what would cause me to obviously pour lots of money into those specific supplements. But doing more and more research and seeing more and more studies that are proving it the opposite, in the way that you can actually get sufficient amount of glutamine and BCAAs through just by eating food. Yeah, in other words, if you're getting in a wide amount of variety of certain foods, and obviously high protein based ones as well, this means that you'll be covered in terms of BCAAs and glutamine and stuff like that, and you don't need to actually buy these supplements. Okay, but then also obviously because your overall intake is relevant to your training schedule and stuff like that, this means that you should then be able to recover on point. And also if you've got a solid sleeping schedule in place as well, if this is all in sync, you can get away without using these supplements whatsoever, and therefore save yourself money and use that towards things that will actually make your lifestyle that extra bit better, or hey, buy something cool for someone else. Okay, carry it forward with the money that you've saved. Myth busting. This one is that you need to have a cheat meal every week to keep yourself sanity and to improve progress. This is something which I actually disagree with big time, in the way that usually people that are having these cheat meals and stuff like that, 9 times out of 10 aren't really getting the results that they want. They're doing it more so coming from a place of having that release of just like, what, I've worked hard this week, I deserve this, and therefore more often than not that cheat meal turns into a cheat day. And over time, this is where, just like what happened with me, it turns into a 4 days going super clean and killing it, and then Friday rolls in, so you have your cheat meal at night, fuck it mode kicks in Saturday, and that just rolls in across the rest of the week. So what I always suggest instead is that only use cheat meals if you are someone that's a lot more advanced and has been in the game for a long time and has a really quality relationship with food, where you haven't got any sort of emotional impulses towards certain food, and that once you've had your cheat meal or your cheat day, that you can easily return to your normal calorie deficit or maintenance intake or whatever the following day without feeling like, oh, I hate my life. I hate food, whatever. Okay, because if this is your attachment to food in that sort of scenario, utilizing cheat meals and stuff like that is actually going to be of negative effect. What you should be doing instead is that if your body fat is low enough, utilize refeeds instead, where once a week you increase your intake of calories by say 400 or 500, which equates to about 150 to 170 grams of carbs that you're intaking in extra to be able to boost your leptin hormone levels. And then that is actually something that can be useful to actually keep your hormones primed, because usually the longer that you're in a dieting sort of period, in other words eating at a calorie deficit, your hormones will actually go down as your body tries to sort of fight against the process of losing more body fat. Because remember that fat is free for the body to hold on to, muscle is not. So usually it's easiest for the body to start letting go of muscle. This is just a process to be able to stop that from happening, in the way that we want to maintain as much muscle as we can. So don't utilize cheat meals unless you actually do have a rock solid relationship with food, because usually it turns into like, yeah, I've got a golden ticket, I can eat whatever I want, I'll let loose. And then when you're back to reality, you hate upon life and you're just, a sad act. Okay, so myth busted. Next one is don't eat too much fruit because it has too much sugar. Understand that sugar is sugar, really, in the scheme of things, regardless of where it comes from. It all gets broken down into carbs. Your body uses the carbs for its natural processes. Based on the quality of where those carbs came from will determine how long you get energy from it for, but understand that your body can still use the energy that comes from all carbs regardless. And then obviously from there, based on your sort of lifestyle demands and stuff like that, will dictate where you get those carbs from. But to say though to not eat fruit because it has too much sugar in it is just BS. Okay, that's about as bro as it gets. That's obviously, fruit has lots of nutrients. Certain fruits have certain fruits have lots of fiber. And hey, as the old saying goes, you need to get 2 fruits of veg a day, or what is it, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. So in other words, if you enjoy fruits and you enjoy lots of them, hey, work them into your intake, okay? As long as you're meeting your calorie deficit at the end of the day and you're getting in enough vitamins, minerals and macronutrients, you're going to be fine. Myth busted. Next one is that organic produce is necessary compared to store-bought produce, okay? This is something which obviously is a bit controversial, and it all will come down to values basically, but understand that you can get just as good a results and have your health just as much on point as someone like me, for example, who hasn't bought organic stuff since the dawn of time unless it was on special. Just normal stuff from IGA or Woolies or Coles that you see just there. I've never actually bought anything organic from, say, like a farmer's market or like the organic section or whatever, okay? And absolutely fine. I get results just as good as anyone else compared to that buys organic and whatever. So it all comes down to values, okay? In other words, if you value what organic stands for and things like that, by all means, go for it, okay? But if you're just buying organic solely for the reason thinking that you're going to get better results, understand that, as we touched on in a previous bomb before, quality of the food that you're taking in doesn't matter as much as the overall quantity, okay? So you can be buying organic to your heart's content, but if you're giving your body too much intake overall, your body isn't going to let go of body fat. It's actually going to gain it because you're giving it too much energy, all right? So in the scheme of things, in other words, it all comes down to values. If you value what organic stands for, go for gold. If you don't though, and you'd much rather just get standard produce and stuff like that from IGA, Woolies or Coles, hey, as long as you're getting your overall intake in, relevant to how much your body needs, you're going to be fine. Myth busted. Next one is to avoid preservatives and artificial sweeteners from packaged goods or jarred goods like the plague. Understand that once again, this is something which is entirely irrelevant, because all this stuff that's in jars and that's in packets and stuff like that has got energy just like everything else, okay? Obviously it has a longer shelf life because it's in a jar and because it's in a packet, okay? But I don't know if you've ever noticed, but that stuff tastes absolutely fucking amazing. And for those of us that may not have the time or don't want to isolate the time to be able to make our own sauces or whatever, it's a great turn to actually be able to get that extra flavor into your dishes, okay? Because at the end of the day, it will come down to that. Are you enjoying the food that you're eating? If you're not, your journey isn't going to be full of happiness and stuff like that, in terms of like food is such a huge dictator upon the results that you get. So if you're not looking forward to everything that you're eating and it tastes like cardboard and it's boring or whatever, usually when we get bored, this is when we binge and we fall off track. So by including actual sauces and packaged things and whatever, I've got no harm against it whatsoever. In fact, I buy stuff from those sort of aisles every single week, whether it be pasta sauces or tinned meats or packet sauces, whatever, okay? I'm not someone that just shops solely the perimeter of the shops and avoids everything in the middle, all right? Remember that, as we touched on before, quantity matters more than the quality, okay? So if you've got nothing against actually getting the some of those foods coming from the packaged goods and the jars or whatever, well then go for gold, okay? Because it's not going to make or break your results. Once again, it all comes down to values. So if your values are solely aligned with making sure that everything is 100% fresh and whatever, well then go for it, okay? Awesome. But as long as you're getting your intake at the end of the day and you're getting baseline macronutrients and vitamins and minerals and stuff like that, you're going to be fine, all right? Myth busted. Next one is that you need to utilize fat burners to overcome plateaus. This is something that I unfortunately believed for a long time, which resulted in me actually pouring lots of money into fat burners for an extended period of time. I don't know if you've noticed, but none of these are cheap. They all cost between 60 and about $100 depending on what it was that you got. Understand that what a plateau basically is your body accustoming to what's going on. So if your goals are fat loss and you've hit a plateau, all right, don't stress and think that everything is going wrong. What I'd suggest is to just see if that's still taking effect for the following week. If it is, and your weight is still exactly the same or it's gone up just slightly, decrease your intake by a little bit, okay? Or if you're someone that's just focusing on eating clean and that's the extent of your focus, if you're hitting a plateau, well, bummer for you, because all you're focusing on is just what you're putting into your system. How you're supposed to progress from that is very difficult, because you've got a lot of grey areas in terms of just being able to then go like, well, what the fuck? Because what you don't track, you can't measure. So if you're just focusing on what you're putting in, it's very difficult to then be able to gauge what you should chop and change to move forward. But the moral of the story here is that you don't need fat burners, you don't need supplements. Understand that what I believe to be the best fat burner is just eating at a calorie deficit and getting consistency there and making sure that you're enjoying the foods that you're eating on a day-to-day basis while you meet that. Myth busted. Next one is that anything that's labeled natural or guilt-free or gluten-free is good for you. all right? Understand that really all that sort of stuff is just clever marketing to be able to get people to buy the stuff, yeah? What makes something natural anyway, or what makes something guilt-free anyway? You know what I mean? Usually it's just that it's got more nutrients in, but hey, at the end of the day, nothing is junk, nothing is clean, all food is fuel. All right. So if you see food in that way, it then means that you can, you know, pick and choose foods in this sort of manner. But to think that you should feel guilt for eating a certain food or naughty or whatever is just BS. You should not feel that way, because that's you then treating yourself in a way that can cause harm and a negative relationship with food in the long run. Okay. See food, all food instead, as fuel for happiness and for lifestyle. Myth busted. Next one is that going vegan or vegetarian is the way to go for next level fat loss. Obviously, upon filming this video, the whole vegan and vegetarian movement is growing rapidly, which is awesome. Like, I've got nothing against what they stand for, okay, in the way that against animal cruelty and eating a plant-based diet and things like that. Awesome. There's actually quite a few days in the week where I don't actually eat meat, just for terms of convenience and stuff like that. But understand that what I suggest is that if you are actually going vegetarian or vegan for the sake of thinking that it's going to boost your results, is please don't do it, okay? Only go vegetarian or vegan if that's where your values are aligned with why that sort of stuff exists anyway, okay? So if you know that you actually do enjoy meat and you enjoy some of these products that vegans and vegetarians don't eat, you know, include them in your day-to-day intake, okay? Because it's not going to make or break your results if you eat those foods or not, okay? It should be a decision that you make solely based on values and what you stand for, okay? Rather than doing it thinking that you're going to get better results from doing so, okay? I've worked with a lot of vegetarians and vegans who chose to go vegetarian or vegan just for the sake of trying to get better results, and all that did was land them into a place where they're actually heavier or worse off than when they started, all right? So myth busted. Next one is that processed foods house calories that the body can't use. I touched on this before in a previous knowledge bomb, but here I'll say it again. All calories are created equal, and your body can use them from regardless of the source, okay? The only thing that's different between foods and all that sort of stuff is that there's different nutrient profiles. The nutrient profile will determine how fast the body breaks the food down through the digestive process, but at the end of the day, all it gets broken down into is protein, carbs, and fat, and then energy. If you're getting in too much energy, you're going to gain weight. If you're getting in not enough and too restrictive, you'll drop weight, but in the form of muscle loss and a little bit of fat. But then if you're really looking to focus on body composition and making sure that you get tight and toned, this is where you should be focusing on how much energy your body needs to trigger that process, to look after your muscle, and therefore manipulate your body composition, okay? Understand that your body can still use the energy that comes from the processed foods, okay? Obviously what you'll find is that those processed foods are very calorie dense, so naturally if you eat lots of them, it's gonna eat through a lot of your intake. So naturally, if your goal is fat loss, you would allocate a bit of your intake to that sort of food, but the rest of it to nutrient dense foods, so that you get full and so that you've got energy to be able to smash the day. Myth busted. We have superfoods, okay? Understand that there's no such thing as a superfood. Obviously where the idea comes from is that it's you know, a superfood, a food that has got so much nutrients compared to everything else, and therefore you should eat truckloads of it. I'm someone that believes that you shouldn't worship or glorify and like put on a pedestal any certain foods, and you also shouldn't demonize and dish hate upon any certain foods either, okay? In other words, as I touched on before, everything's got nutrients. Yes, some of these superfoods like goji berries or kale or, you know, almonds or just whatever, yes, this stuff has got more nutrients, but understand at the end of the day, it's got nutrients and whatever, and calories like everything else also. Remember that it all comes down to quantity at the end of the day, so you can be eating as much superfoods as you want, but if you're getting in too much of them and it causes you to go into a surplus when you're actually trying to lose body fat, this is where your weight will gradually go up if this is what's happening, all right? Try and, yes, include superfoods in your day-to-day intake if you like and you enjoy them. By all means, go for gold, but most of them are fairly costly. So obviously, you know, if your values are in line with getting lots of them, go for gold. Mine actually aren't, so I personally don't buy them, okay? Myth busted. Next one is that you can't drink alcohol while in a fat loss phase. This is something which you'll typically see in basically every diet plan and meal plan that's in existence, where it says you cannot drink alcohol. Understand that alcohol, basically at the end of the day, is pretty much just a carb, and your body needs carbs. So based on your intake of carbs per day that your body needs, you can allocate that to where you want to. What you'll find is that a lot of alcohol is fairly calorie dense, so I'd suggest that you plan ahead when it comes to social outings where you know you're going to be drinking booze. In other words, pre-log into MyFitnessPal or your tracking app what it is that you want to drink, and then fill the rest of your intake during the day with whatever you need to be able to meet your overall target, okay? But to say that you can't have alcohol while trying to lose body fat is just ridiculous, because at the end of the day, what matters most is, are you hitting your calorie deficit intake consistently, not, you know, the quality of your food or what it is that you're drinking and eating, okay? What I'd personally suggest is that if you want to drink as much as possible for a few amount of calories as possible, get amongst vodka and Coke Zero or some of these low carb beers or whatever. That way you can actually drink more of them for less amount of a calorie investment. Myth busted. This one is brown rice is better for you than white rice, or sweet potatoes are better for you than normal potatoes, or brown bread is better than white bread, like that sort of thing. You get the picture, all right? Understand that usually the wholemeal or the brown or whatever has usually got some extra nutrients compared to the white, but understand at the end of the day, with all those sort of things, it all comes down to carbs and energy anyway. So what I'd personally suggest is that to just choose which you like more, basically, in terms of the taste, what makes you feel the best, and eat that, okay? Don't demonize or hate or love upon any of them in a way that you see more like a specific one in a better light than the other, but rather go upon taste, okay? So in my case, you know, I actually do like brown rice better than white rice. I do enjoy sweet potatoes better than white potatoes. Unless it's chips, well then usually it's kind of, or what do I feel like, because I like them both. But then when it comes to bread, I usually also, it's kind of, you know, comme ci comme ça. I like both just as much as I do each other. So it comes down to taste. What I'd suggest, okay, obviously yes, certain ones have got more nutrients than each other, but hey, at the end of the day, it comes down to, are you enjoying what you're eating? Don't force yourself to eat anything just because apparently it's cleaner or whatever. Remember that at the end of the day, it all comes down to calories and energy, okay, relevant to what your goals are. Myth busted. And boom, there we go. How good was that? Part 2 of our Mythbusters biggest nutrition, fact or fiction session that what I've seen on the internet to date. In the way that currently on the internet, social media, Google, wherever, YouTube even, there is so much conflicting information. Hopefully what this has done for you is being able to open your eyes a bit to just like, oh wow, like I've told it pretty straight in black and white. I've not tried to sugarcoat anything. Understand that everything that I've shared has come from experience, personal research, and what I've been coached in myself. If you found this valuable, or you wanted to actually get some more clarity on one of these specific myths that I busted just before, feel free to comment below. All right, comment below and ask what you need to, or share what you'd like to that was valuable, and let's keep the conversation going. All right. But if you found that all that this has done is kind of just made you feel more confused than what you were before, and kind of just doubting yourself and feeling lost amongst nutrition all the more, please don't stay this way. Don't allow yourself to feel like this anymore. Click below also, and let's get amongst the chat together, okay? A dream body breakthrough call. What we'll do is I'll connect with you, okay? I'll ask you some questions about what's going on amongst your journey, where you're at and what's keeping you stuck, and we'll also get clear on where you want to be and figure out what can be done to get you from A to B in a way that will be very sustainable to allow you to have permanent success in the future. All right. But either way, I really hope you enjoyed this 2-part series. It's been fantastic fun piecing it together. Hope that you found value in it, and I'll see you next time in the Boss Fitness world. Angus signing out. Take care.